The second closed beta for Aniimo has been going on for a little over a week, and I've spent a lot of time playing around with its systems. So for this video, I wanted to dive deeper into explaining some of the systems like stats, rating potentials, personalities, and traits so that you can have a better understanding of how to build your Aniimo once you get your hands on the game. Also, some quick disclaimers. The first is that this information is taken from the second closed beta. I mean, duh. So it's subject to change in later updates. The second is that the goal here isn't to try and establish or explain any kind of meta. We're a good ways away from that. I really just wanted to get this video out for you guys so you can get a better understanding of the Aniimo raising systems that are already in place. With all that out of the way, starting with the basics, each Aniimo has 6 different stats: HP, attack, physical defense, magic defense, regen, and break. For the most part, these are pretty self-explanatory. HP is your health, attack is calculated into how much damage you'll do, and break is calculated into how much damage you'll do to an enemy's break gauge. Then for the defenses, for the most part, any Aniimo whose basic attack string is melee is dealing physical damage. An Aniimo that attack from range will deal magic damage. Lastly, regen is how much energy that Aniimo will recover with their basic attack string. Higher regen means you'll be able to weave in skills a lot faster. Now alongside the stats, Aniimo are categorized into different roles, with the roles letting you know what the Animo's main stats are, what kinds of skills they'll learn, and how you should rotate through them within a fight. You can kind of think of them in MMO terms. You have your DPS, your break, your support, and your regen. Now, the names for these roles have changed a bit since the last beta, so I wouldn't get too caught up on the terms themselves. The main takeaway here should be that each Aniimo has a function within the party, whether that be to deal damage, take out the enemy's break gauge, provide buffs, or heal the party. This leads us into one of the first systems you'll likely encounter in Aniimo: grade potentials. Each Aniimo you catch will receive a rating, ranging from common all the way to perfect. Now, you might assume that the rating indicates the differences in strength between individual Aniimo, and you'd be half right. However, you need to look a little closer to really understand what it's telling you. For what I can tell, these ratings are essentially giving you an idea on the average stat growth for that individual Aniimo. If you played Pokemon, you can kind of think of them like IVs. Taking a look at this Ember Pup stat breakdown, you'll see that each stat has a number indicating its growth rate. Now, this number isn't specifically how much it will gain per level, but it lets us know that it'll gain more of that stat per level up. Therefore, in order to receive higher grade potential tiers, you'll need higher stat growths, with an Animo's main stats indicated by their role weighing much more heavily. There's also the special Spring Up Fruit item, which will raise an Animo's 2 main stat growths by 1, potentially letting you turn an elite tier Aniimo perfect, which is also why I wouldn't stress about trying to catch a perfect grade Aniimo too early on. Next up, the second system that Aniimo introduces you to is personality types. Again, if you've played Pokemon, you can think of these like natures. Essentially, each Aniimo you catch will have a Myers-Briggs personality type, with each letter of that personality type granting a small buff to a specific stat. To quickly break them down, your first buff can either be an E, which gives them an attack and break boost, or an I, that gives them a boost to their regen. The next buff can either be an S, that gives them a slight damage percent boost, or an N, which grants them some extra crit rate. Third, we have either a T, that gives a physical defense boost, or an F, that grants a magic defense boost. And last up, we have either a J, which gives a small boost to their health, or a P, which gives them a small damage reduction boost. As you can probably see, the first 2 letters will always grant some kind of offensive boost, while the latter 2 will always grant a defensive boost. And if I had to guess, I'd assume for your DPS and break Aniimo, you'd be looking for the attack/break boost and then the crit rate boost. However, I'm no theory crafter, so I'll leave actually calculating that out to the experts. Lastly, it's also worth mentioning that if you have an Aniimo that you really like aside from their personality type, you can use a Psyche fruit to try and reroll the personality type into one that's a little better suited for their role. Moving on, we have the trait system, which is honestly pretty straightforward but incredibly important. You can think of traits like passives, and an Animo's trait is determined once you catch it. Simple, right? However, each Aniimo species will have 2 trait options, a common trait and a rare trait, and in basically every circumstance, the rare trait is significantly stronger, sometimes even role-defining. For instance, take one of my favorite Animos, Stellaris. Its common trait, Combo Master, slightly increases the damage of its next skill after auto-attacking. Not bad, but nothing to write home about either. However, its rare trait, Grand Sorcerer, causes each normal attack to deal another instance of damage after using its skill, which its clone can also trigger, meaning your attack string can all of a sudden trigger 3 hits instead of 1. Significantly stronger. All that to say, you'll definitely want to keep any rare trait Aniimo you encounter around. But if you happen to have an Aniimo with everything else you'd want besides its rare trait, you can feed it a trait fruit to change its trait from common to rare or vice versa. Last up for raising your Aniimo, you have leveling, evolving, and resonance. Leveling is pretty straightforward. Your Aniimo gets some experience whenever you catch or defeat wild Aniimo, but the chunk of their leveling will come from feeding them leveling gems that you can either purchase with the in-game currency or collect from missions and chests. Evolving, on the other hand, gets a little funky because 1. Some Aniimo don't have linear evolution paths, and those branching paths also sometimes causes them to swap between roles. And 2, besides reaching a level threshold, some Aniimo will also require special conditions to be met, like defeating their alpha form out in the wild or completing a special quest chain. All that to say, if you have an Aniimo you really like, check their evolution requirements to make sure you know what you need to do to evolve them. Lastly, we have resonance, which is also actually pretty straightforward. By navigating to the resonance screen, you'll see that each Aniimo has 6 resonance stages, and as you progress through each stage, you'll passively boost the stats for that specific Aniimo. To do that, you'll need to progress through each point on a given star in order to progress to the next one. You can progress through each point on a star by using species-specific crystals that you can obtain by catching multiples of said species of Aniimo. Then, in order to progress to the next star, you'll need astronite crystals, which you can obtain by defeating alpha Aniimo and spending daily energy to open their chest. With that in mind, I also wouldn't necessarily go too hard on resonance until you have an Aniimo you're really comfortable keeping around for a long while, since it'll take a bit of time in order to get more astronite crystals. Moving on, the last 2 systems I want to touch on are potentially the most confusing, so I'll try and break it down for you. First up, we have capabilities. Again, if you're familiar with Pokemon, then the easiest comparison would be to Pokemon's EV system. Essentially, as you progress through an Animo's resonance stages, it'll receive capability points that you can allocate into 5 separate areas: Might, Constitution, Endurance, Spirit, Gusto, and Penetration. Leveling up any of the stats will require an increasing amount of capability points, and every 5 stages you progress on a given stat, you'll receive some bonuses for your Aniimo. To quickly run through them, each level for Might will grant you 2 attack, with every 5 stages of Might granting you an additional 8% attack. Each level for Constitution will grant you 40 health, with every 5 stages of Constitution granting you an additional 8% health. Each level for Endurance and Spirit will grant you +3 to physical defense or magic defense respectively, with every 5 stages granting you an additional 8% of that defense. Each level for Gusto will grant you +3 to regen, with every 5 stages granting you an additional 2% cooldown reduction. And lastly, each level for Penetration will grant you +4 to your break, with every 5 stages granting you an additional 2% crit rate. Now, when you first unlock the capability system, the game will likely have already allocated your points into stats relevant for your Aniimo. However, if you don't like where it put them, you can spend a small amount of credits in order to reset the points and allocate them yourself. Lastly, another thing to keep in mind is that every 5 stages it will also cost more capability points to upgrade a stat. So, since the 5-stage breakpoints are much stronger, I'd recommend focusing on hitting breakpoints over just allocating points willy-nilly. With that being said, that leads us into the last system for today's video, held items. By participating in the Hollow Battle Sim game mode, you can spend daily energy to obtain held items and runes. You can kind of think of these like an equipped accessory for your Aniimo. Each Aniimo can hold up to 1 held item, and every held item has a level, a primary stat it provides, secondary effects that it can provide, rune slots for bonus effects, and a rarity tier. Starting from the top, held items can go up to a maximum level of 15. However, their max level is determined by their rarity, with the highest tier being golden. Furthermore, each item has a primary stat it provides to give you an idea of which kind of Aniimo should be holding it, and leveling up the held item improves this primary stat. However, like I mentioned before, held items that are purple tier or higher can also grant additional bonuses like extra points to your capability stages by filling out the rune slots. To receive these bonuses, you'll need to reach 12 and then 20 advanced attribute points respectively, and you gain these points by slotting higher tier runes into your items. Speaking of runes, as you level up your held items, you'll unlock these rune slots that can grant even more bonuses to the item. The runes themselves have a layer of RNG as each rune shape provides a set primary stat while also providing a number of randomized secondary stats. The higher rarity the rune, the more secondary stats said rune can provide. And again, the rarity of your runes also determines how many advanced attribute points it will provide your held item, with the maximum being 4 points gained from a golden rarity rune. This also means that in order to activate any held item's second advanced attribute effect, you'll need all 5 slots to contain golden tier runes. Now I know that was a lot, but don't worry, you don't need to have all of this memorized or really even worry about it at the start of the game. Again, the purpose here is just to help you be aware of the systems Aniimo has going on so that you're not overwhelmed by them all at once when you start playing yourself. And with that, we've covered the systems that you'll need to interact with in order to build each Aniimo for your team. I know it's a lot on paper, but broken down and taken slowly, I really do think you'll find that they flow together pretty well. And so I hope this video has helped you get a better understanding of how to utilize each of those systems. As always, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more Aniimo content and let me know down in the comments which Aniimo design is your favorite so far. Most importantly, have a blessed day.